Good morning or afternoon or evening, whenever you're watching this video. You are watching this video because you have been hired as a 1099 contractor to work for the Southport Baptist Church School of the Arts as an instructor. And we are so glad to have you as part of the team. During today's video, you will get an overview of everything in the instructor handbook. Then you will watch a subsequent video about safety and security. So let's dive right in. The mission statement of the School of the Arts is where disciples make disciples through the arts. Our purpose is to provide quality instruction with a biblical worldview, and that's where you come in. You are a vital part of that instruction. This first semester, we offered 18 classes, and we had students take us up on 10 of those, which is pretty incredible. At this moment, on November 3rd, 2022, we currently have 7 instructors, and that is a huge, huge blessing. So thank you for joining our team. I am your contact person for the School of the Arts. So I ask that you do not contact other instructors or church office staff or church ministerial staff. I'm the contact person. So if you have questions, please reach out to me and I will be glad to answer those questions. I am off on Fridays. So if you send me a message on Friday, I'm probably not going to reply to you unless it's an emergency. Our School of the Arts is also closed on Fridays. So I would encourage you, if you're able, to take some time off on Fridays as well. Instructors will be given registration forms and contact information for every student that you teach. So I encourage you to begin now to develop relationships with your students and parents so that you have a good flow of communication. I'm asking you to contact all of your students before the new semester begins. Try and do it by the end of December so they have a little bit of time to get to know you. I'm asking you to commit to an entire school year. So if you're coming in August, I'm asking you to commit all the way through May. If you're coming in December or January, I'm asking you to finish out through May, because we want consistency for our students and the instructors that they have. I do expect for you to be punctual and prepared for every lesson in class, and I do request an advance notice of 30 days if you are unable to fulfill your contract, which should only be in extreme cases. Instructors are, as I said, 1099 contractors, and you are paid $20 an hour is the starting hourly rate. You will receive a paycheck every other week that will be placed in your mailbox, and it is based on the number of classes or lessons that you teach. For example, if you only teach 1/2 hour lesson a week, that's $10 that you made for that week. If you teach 3 1-hour classes, that's $60 that you made for that week. It does not matter how many students are in your class, your hourly rate remains the same. Instructors are asked to sign in each day using the sign-in sheet that is on the table in the office across from the communications secretary's office, and you simply document which students came and which ones did not. You always document your full schedule. For example, if I have 4 students and 3 of them show up, I would write 4 half-hour lessons in that column. And then I would write, Billy Bob did not show up, Susie, Clara, and Janie all were present, or whatever. Just be specific so that we have a way to document why you're being paid, what you're being paid. There is a paydays calendar that you will be given that shows you when you are paid. It's a slight delay because the pay period ends the week before you actually receive the paycheck. We will have quarterly continuing education training sessions for all instructors that you will be paid for your time. So if it lasts for 1 hour, you would receive pay for 1 hour. If it lasts for 2 hours, you would receive pay for 2 hours. And we're going to really focus on how to integrate the gospel and a biblical worldview into your content area, as well as safety training, procedural training, things like that. This calendar for pay will remain the same. So when you get it, it should not adjust at all. But you will receive a new one each semester that has those dates. It's basically every other week for the entire year. And for our purposes, it's when we are actually teaching lessons. Students pay a $25 per student non-refundable registration fee. This is non-refundable. So if you have a student who is registered and after the first lesson, the parent decides, hey, I don't really want to do lessons, I change my mind, it's non-refundable. If they have an issue with that, please direct them to me and I will take care of that, because we use that registration fee to purchase the things that we need for them for the first week of lessons. Private lessons here at the School of the Arts cost $90 per month for 4 half-hour lessons. Group classes cost $45 per month for 4 1-hour classes, plus a $50 per semester supplies fee. You will be responsible for receipting these payments. There are codes on your receipt book. The most important thing that you put on the receipt is who you received it from, how they paid, cash or check, and if it was by check, put the check number, the date, and then the code of what they're paying for. So on the front of your receipt book, there's a 4-digit code for if they're paying for group classes, or if they're paying for private lessons, or if they're paying for the supplies fee. I handle the registration payments, so you do not worry about coding that. Music students should commit to practice the amount of time their instructor recommends. That's up to you to set that. When I start out with beginning students, I usually encourage them to practice 15 minutes per day, because you've got to look at it from their perspective, especially if it's a child, if they're going from not practicing at all, and then you suddenly say, oh, I want you to practice 45 minutes. That's not very realistic. Be sure to communicate your expectations, not just of practice times, but how you expect students to behave or react or respond in lessons. Due dates for payments. For this year, and this may change next year, but for this year, payments are due by the first Monday of the month. So I send out reminders to students and remind them that it's due on such and such a day. If it's not received by that day, I send out another reminder. If it's still not received, I send out another reminder, and I send you a reminder and say, hey, Janie hasn't paid. Can you please remind them to pay when you see them for their lesson? So I try and take that burden off of you. If you receive multiple payments, for example, if a student wants to pay for the entire semester, you would code it correctly and you would write payment for entire semester. Or if it's a group class and they're paying for their group class tuition and their supplies fee, you would just code both of those things. So the receipt needs to be really specific to match the money that you have received. Late payments. I handle the late payments. Like I said, I only get you involved if I've already contacted the parent 2 or 3 times and they still have not paid their tuition fee that is due. Scholarships are available. And currently, we have funds available that are not being used. So if you know of someone who needs a scholarship, or if you start teaching and throughout the semester you realize that a student's going to have to withdraw because of lack of funds, please let us know, and we will step in and offer scholarship funds. A private donor this semester blessed 3 students, and so they were able to take lessons that they otherwise would not have been able to do. For attendance, show grace, but don't run over your allotted or less than class time. So it's a standing appointment, like at the doctor's office. If a student arrives at 3:10 and their lesson was at 3, just start their lesson at 3:10 and give them the 20 minutes. Don't go over so that the next person is late, but show some grace where you can. For example, one of our instructors this semester had a student who had a doctor's appointment. The parents let him know and said, hey, Billy Bob's not going to be there. Is there any way we can make it up? And the instructor was willing to do that, but you are not required to do so. Show grace where you are able. Missed lessons. If a student misses a lesson, you do not have to make it up. Okay? It's done. Water under the bridge. You just go on to the next lesson. If you miss a lesson, I encourage you to let your students' parents know in advance if you're able, but things happen. You get sick, kids get sick, family members have issues, whatever. But you do have to make that up. If you miss the lesson, you have to make it up. Okay, so you will be responsible for rescheduling that using the Google Calendar and communicating with me, rescheduling those missed classes. Now, sometimes you can just double up and do an hour lesson, but sometimes that's not a possibility, especially if your lessons are stacked back to back to back. So work with me and we will get those lessons rescheduled. Cancellations. If a student is excessively late or absent or causes disruption in class, you need to have already communicated with the parent, then communicate with me if it continues to be an issue, and then discuss with me how we can handle it. Don't just make that decision and say, oh, well, you're out, you can't come back. That's a decision that I need to be a part of, because we are a ministry and our goal is to show Christ's love no matter what, though there are some extreme cases where students may not be a good fit for the particular class or program they're enrolled in. The Spring Showcase is a big deal. It's our big recital, and everybody who's part of the School of Arts participates, whether it's pottery or creative writing, piano, voice, ukulele, guitar, drums, musical theater. Everybody comes together and participates, and students are expected to participate. However, adult students are not required to participate. We encourage them to, but you cannot require your adult student to participate. So don't fight that battle. The dress code for the Spring Showcase is in the handbook. Theater students will wear costumes normally as part of their Spring Showcase. Student safety is our priority, and the main entry door for all of our lessons and classes, with 2 exceptions, is the door behind the bell tower. Okay, it's the one that faces Howe Street. Students ring the bell and are let in during office hours between 8 and 4 by a Southport Baptist Church staff member. Starting at 4, if you have lessons or classes, you as the instructor have to go let them in. The exceptions to that door are pottery classes, which meet in the CMC, and they use the CMC door, and musical theater, which meets in the chapel and is a pretty large class, so they enter through the double chapel doors. Parents are encouraged to stay for all lessons or classes if their child is under 18, but they are required to stay in the room for the lesson or class between the hours of 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. because that is after church office hours. First aid kits are located throughout the building. The most easily visible one is the one on the wall right before you enter the staff hallway. So if you should need it, that is its location. If a student or parent says they are not able to be photographed, you need to share that with me, because on the registration form they sign that unless they give notice, their photo may be used for advertising purposes. So please let me know that. Regular communication regarding a student's progress should be maintained. The parent or the student, depending on if it's an adult, should always know how they're doing in the lesson or class, or how their child is doing. Try and do it with a positive spin. You're going to have those few students who don't make as much progress as you would like, but still look for the positive and encourage them in their progress. Instructors should discuss any plans they have to encourage students to participate in special music at Southport Baptist Church with me. I am also the music director of the church, so do not say to a student, "Oh, I want you to come and play the offertory on Sunday." Check with me, because we have a schedule and people are scheduled pretty far in advance. There is a subsequent safety training video that we talked about, so be sure that you watch that when you finish. Inclement weather policy. I will keep you posted, and then you will communicate to your students. If there is a hurricane or a tornado or I don't know, anything crazy that happens, I will communicate with you. We try and follow pretty closely with Brunswick County Schools schedule, but we do not always match theirs. So just communicate with me and we'll handle that. There are locations for tornado warnings. For most of our instructors, it's the hallway closest to where you are on the ground floor. So for example, if you're in the choir room or if you're in room 402 behind the sanctuary, that hallway right there by the bathrooms, that's your location. If you're in the CMC, you know where your location is. That there's a hallway right there. If you are in the upstairs classrooms in the older part of the building for creative writing, drums, group piano class, you would go downstairs to the basement. Grievance procedure. Let me back up. Fire. If there is a fire, you're going to exit out of the closest door and you're going to meet at the stage in the park. That's our fire location. Grievance procedures. Students and parents have been instructed to speak with the instructor directly if they have an issue first. If you can't resolve it, then you will contact me and we will work together. It is important to stay on schedule, because one of the quickest complaints a parent will have is that you weren't ready to start on time, or that you talked more than you taught, or that you went over and it caused them to be late for dance or whatever they have going on. No lessons or classes will be held in students' homes or other locations. All lessons and classes must be held on campus. Parking. Students may park wherever they can find a space. We don't own any parking at Southport Baptist Church, but I encourage students to park facing House Street so that when they enter through that door, if their parent remains in the vehicle, they can still see them coming and going. But also, we're trying to encourage students not to arrive more than 1 or 2 minutes early so that we have time to get to the door to be able to answer and they're not left standing outside. Entering the building, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Um, we are encouraging students not to arrive more than 1 or 2 minutes early. We're going to use the main door behind the bell tower unless you're pottery and you use the CMC, and unless you're musical theater and you enter through the double doors of the chapel. Remember, office staff only open the door until 4 p.m. So as an instructor, if you have a lesson at 4 or after 4, you are responsible for going and opening the door for your students. Restrooms. There is a restroom very close to every single classroom that we use. In the CMC, there's one in the lobby around the corner. There is one upstairs in the older part of the building for creative writing and drums and group piano class. There's a boys' bathroom and a girls' bathroom. Outside of the chapel, beside the financial secretary's office, there's a single bathroom for those who use the chapel to use. And for those who use the choir room in room 402 behind the sanctuary, there's a men's restroom and a ladies' restroom right behind the sanctuary. Instructors are expected to stand near the restroom where you can see the student go in. Most of our classrooms, you can stand at the classroom door and see them from where you are, but you should not let students roam unattended at any time throughout the building. Locking up. You are expected when you finish your lessons or your classes to leave the facility better than you found it. Then a designated instructor, and if that's you, I will contact you individually, will set the alarm and lock up the building. I have tried to make sure that you do not have any breaks in your schedule, but sometimes you may have a half hour, sometimes even an hour between two lessons or classes. For those, you will not get paid. You only are paid for times that you are actually teaching a lesson or class. Each semester, I will release the schedule to you, and I will make sure that you have all of the dates that are coming up for that year. So I'll say, hey, Instructor Z, are there any dates that you're going to be out of town? And when we release the schedule to your students, we will include makeup lessons ahead of time when possible. This will assist your students and parents in making sure that they are prepared for any lessons or classes that they have scheduled for that semester. Speaking of students and parents, we do ask that you contact parents if the students are under 18 and that you keep all records of communication. So if it's a text, if it's an email, keep those. Just in case anything is ever said, we want to make sure that we have a record of those things. Students do sign a registration form that lets them know that they are expected to pay for the entire semester, but there are extenuating circumstances sometimes when a student has to withdraw early. If that happens, please let me know and I will address that with the School of the Arts team. You do have in your folder our scripture for this year. It's Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, do it from the heart as something done for the Lord and not for people. Then there is a supplemental list of scriptures for other instruments to help you weave in scripture and a biblical worldview into your lesson instruction. We've already talked about paydays. We've talked about how to receipt. If you have a question about how to receipt, please let me know and I'll be glad to help you. After you receipt money, one thing I did neglect to mention is you will put it in a white envelope that's provided for you in your instructor pencil box. Then you will put it, the envelope, the receipt, the sealed money, in the black lockbox on the wall outside of the communications secretary's office. You can combine all of your payments and receipts from that day into one envelope. Just make sure that every single payment has a matching receipt. I provided you with maps in your folder. As I said, you're going to listen to the safety and security training video from Megan Merritt, our resident safety and security expert. And if you have any questions between now and the next time I see you, please let me know. Looking forward to having you as part of the School of the Arts instructor team.